So let's take an example of another bar chart or Gantt chart here. From what we're seeing here, we have how many activities? We have in the y-axis here the activities names from A, B, C all the way to activity H. And each activity represents its bar chart with the x-axis. And as we see here, it's not in months, it's not in days, it's in weeks. And if I ask you activity A, how many months it's needed to finish, you can easily tell it needs 6 months. Activity B, around 2 months. How about activity D and E? It takes 3 months to finish, and so on. So the question for you I have is, what is the duration of the project? 1. And the second question I want you to think about is the following. Bar charts or Gantt charts help tell us what the progress of the project at any week in the schedule. So the question here, based on the bar chart schedule here that we are showing, what is the planned progress for the project at week 11 based on the schedule? So the duration of the project, as maybe you guessed it, is very simple. You look at the last activity we have here. The end of the last activity will be the duration of the entire project of 20 days. Now, the question I highlighted for you is, based on this bar chart, what is the planned progress if I am your manager or I am an executive or even I'm the client asking you the question, on week number 11, what you are planning to do? So in week number 11, what we can see here, we can comfortably say that we are planning to finish activity A, activity B, and we will be just finishing with activity C. At the beginning of week 11, we are planning to start with both activity D and activity E. But we still did not touch or performed in any way possible activity F or G or H. This is one. Second, if I tell you, okay, what about at the end of week 11? What's your plan? So what's the right answer for that is, at the end of week 11, in addition to the A, B, and C activities will be done, we have activity D and E. We are planning to finish around 33 or 1/3% of the entire activity, because it has 3 weeks and we have to finish around 1 week by the end of week 11 for both activities. As we can see here, we have 1, 2, 3, and if we're finishing the first week, we have only 2 weeks left, so 1/3 or of the entire that activity. So bar charts can also represent many pieces of project information. For example, in addition to show a simple start or a simple finish of each activity, it also can show the resources needed on each activity, such as, let's say, budget or labors needed on each activity. So let's take an example. Here, bar charts usually use the x-axis, as I mentioned, on the time scale to show the duration on each of these bars for each activity. The y-axis can use to add items such as man hours, number of labors, or equipment needed, or the budget. So I gave you here an example of using a budget in a bar chart. What that will tell us, for example, activity A it mentioned that we have allocated budget to activity A of around $110,000. Activity, let's say, E, we have allocated budget of $60,000. Activity H, for example, we have allocated budget of around $240,000. So in general, it shows resources. We can combine, in this example, the resources is the cost or the money used for each of the activities. And this variable is then usually shown as a curve imposed on the bar chart, as I just show here in the graph. And as you can see, why it looks like an S-curve, because in the beginning of the project, most of the activities is starting very slowly until start to catch up and start to becoming more jammed, your construction site, with much more activities. So the more activities, there will be more sharp increase in the S-curve, where most of the construction activities are showing and taking place. So the resources will increase, because this curve is a cumulative curve of, in this example, the budget. And towards the end, if you notice, it start to flatten up and to becoming less steep as the first or the beginning of the project or the construction. And the reason is, at the end, you start to also reduce a lot of the activities and trying to finish all your projects to submit it to the client. So we can easily get some information from the bar charts. We can impose sometimes in the y-axis some resources allocations, instead of just highlighting a start and a finish time on each of the construction activities. So let's take another example. Instead of showing you the schedule and ask you what's the planned, or showing you the schedule and shade some colors and tell you, okay, are we ahead or behind the schedule? I'm gonna ask you to develop a bar chart. Let's take a simple example here. Draw a bar chart for the following 4 activities. You have A, B, and C. I gave you the starting week of each of these activities, 1, 2, 3, and 3, and the duration of each activity. So in our example, here are the 4 projects what we want to draw the activities or the bar chart for. And as I mentioned to you, usually what we have, the x-axis are the number of weeks. We have the activity A around 3 weeks, starting it from the first week. And you can easily look at activity B. You go to second week and also draw another bar. The length of the bar also 3 weeks. Activity C starts from week number 3 and goes for only 2 weeks. The last activity we have here is activity D, which starts also 3, as you can see here, and goes all the way to the end of week number 6. So in this case, from what we can see here from a simple example, the total duration of our simple project here of these 4 activities are 6 weeks.